So this is a podcast about wellness practices, psychology, and all things well-being. So today we have Gabrielle from Restorative Contact. It's a practice that she'd love to tell us more about and which I'm really excited to really get acquainted with. So we'll just jump right in. Hi, Gabrielle. I'm so glad you could be here and we could see each other finally.
Same. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I love talking about restorative contact and the body and movement and dance. So all this is great.
So maybe you could start with just your background and how you got into restorative contact as a practice.
Sure. So I'm a professional dancer. It's been 18 years. So yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about the body, being in physical body-based practices. Um, and yeah, that also means I make performances, I make shows, and I teach. And I really do identify as a performer first, which I think has also created an access point to restorative contact because it comes very much from the first person perspective that as a performer and creator, I like to make things kind of from the inside. I want to know how it feels. And then I use that to make choices about what I'm making, which is maybe different than how some people might think of other types of choreographers that might be more removed and might be sort of more like directors moving people around.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I really feel like performer first. And so that felt experience is also kind of what helped me sort of uncover this idea of restorative contact, which is a mindful, body-centered movement and empathy practice is how I would kind of briefly describe it.
Okay, that's great. I was wondering if you could kind of give us a short walkthrough of how you kind of developed it as a practice, because I remember you were telling me a little about your journey from being a dancer and then more of like going into choreography and then discovering contact and touch as a way to kind of heal in a very nice way for some people that they might not have access to before. And then you kind of created this kind of experience and practice.
Yeah, so I'm a practitioner of contact improvisation and also a teacher of the form. It's a partners, a spontaneous improvised dance form where you use other people's body weight, their structure, to create these spontaneous dances. So it's a lot of counterbalance. That would mean kind of like leaning away from someone or leaning in towards them, rolling and sliding. It's extremely fun practice. I encourage people to do it. Although, yes, maybe not for everyone because it can be extremely intimate because you are in direct body to body contact with people that maybe you'd never even met before. For me, that's really one of the strengths of the practice is it really started to teach me about how I wanted to work with my body in an exploratory kind of tool-like way. It can be very skill-based. So that was sort of like how I was able to access it, that I didn't feel too precious about my body. Like I was there to learn, I was there to practice. And then of course, yeah, it's social. So that's like a really delightful aspect to it. But I think the fact that there were like many different things going on at one time didn't make it as scary as, some other type of more intimate touch with someone. If that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah, restorative contact, from what I understand of it, is very interesting because it kind of pares down a lot of. It just kind of goes to like the basics of just like
Yeah.
touching and how touch is related to healing in a way, and then the interaction between two people and things like that. I think it's cool. It has this like very basic quality, but also in that basic quality, you could really slow down and like connect.
Yeah, and I think I didn't quite about how did I come to it, but contact improv was kind of my entry point to being in contact with other bodies, and from there, Yeah, you know how things sort of work is like some information from here comes and then some information from there and then
Mm-hmm.
here, and things are in conversation with one another. So my movement practice was in conversation with my dating life. And just thinking about like what my relationship is with touch, what my relationship is with care. And so trying to think, how do I make this like a shorter story? But ended up creating this performance where I had a video recording of an intimate encounter with a male lover, and then I took that kind of choreography and asked a female friend of mine if she would learn that choreography with me, because I was kind of interested in sort of repatterning my search for care, like who I would ask for touch from. And it was really interesting because I was just thinking about this earlier today. Is that touch is touch, and it's powerful wherever it comes from. But that process of working on that piece, it disentangled the physical touch, the pure physical touch, from all the other emotional stuff, the romantic aspirations, the sexuality. It just stripped all that away, so that when I came to Michelle, my request was, I want us to learn this choreography move by move, detail by detail. There's no emotional content, just pay attention and copy it. And so what that revealed was that just by simply doing this movement, just by having body to body contact for an extended period of time, was so deeply relaxing and grounding. And so to me, that just showed that it's just the body to body contact. Like, you don't have to bring all that other stuff in. Of course you can, and there's times where that's appropriate and where that's desired. But to me, it was just such an important reminder that just simply touch without any other expectation for it needing to mean anything or feel like anything is enough. Like, it's really like, that's enough. And that's why restorative contact is a practice that I want people to feel that they can do with anyone. They can do it with their roommate. They can do it with their mom. They can do it with somebody they just met an hour before. And all that is fine, because we're really disentangling it from like those kind of those other expectations, which I think is very foreign for a lot of people. We're not practiced with that. Like, many people, they're limited to their physical contact is with their romantic partner, or when they are a kid, with their parents. And like, there's not a lot outside of that. So
Yeah.
I realize it can be very scary for people.
Yeah, and that's why like contact itself, right, and touch itself, because I've traveled a while ago, and you could see how in different countries and different cultures, touch has many different meanings between different genders, same genders, in public, not in public, and it's a very culture-based kind of behavior in a way. And I love that you're disentangling it from kind of our belief patterns so that we can use it as a tool. I think that's one of the most powerful things, because it is a very important tool. It's like, how do we use our body to connect on the most basic level, right? And
Yeah,
then learn new patterns from that.
exactly. Yes, exactly. What you're talking about learning new patterns is also really key. So, do you know the book "The Body Keeps the Score"? Bessel van der Kolk.
I read it. It's excellent.
So
Yeah.
he really talks about that like trauma lives in the body, and that the only way that you can kind of get rid of that is that you need to create new experiences for the body. That's how you replace those old experiences. So yeah, that's what I want this space to be, or the space of restorative contact to be, is a space where people can come and practice creating new experiences from a very pure place of touch, of just simply sitting, for instance, just sitting side by side with someone. And I think that having it within a container that is like a class or workshop structure is very helpful, especially because sometimes people don't know, they don't know how to ask for a hug, or they might not even know that they need to or would benefit from it. So this sort of takes away all of that. It's like, just show up, you know. Of course, it's a little bit different now that we're doing things online, but the benefit of that is that, you know, people can choose who they want to practice with, which I think is really special. Because I do see this practice as also one of companionship. So, and I like the peer-to-peer aspect, that they practice with someone else. Not, it would be possible in a like kind of COVID time to practice directly with me. But I love the idea that they can practice with a peer. They can practice with their friend, with their lover, with their parent, with their roommate, and that they get to choose who they want that companion to be as they are exploring touch and making new experiences for themselves. I think just seems really powerful to me, you know, that you're not just having to go to a professional, like you choose that person that you want to explore this with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And especially now that a lot of people have been at home for so long, more at home than any other place, that it's a best time than ever to really learn new practices, right? Especially
Yeah.
when we're with a partner or a parent. And I also really love that it's very body focused. And I know that for some people, it's more difficult to access healing from the mind. Like I heard a lot about yoga therapy and how that essentially tricks the mind to just like not really be as active and do different movements with that kind of stuff. So I think this kind of practice that you're teaching, you know, follows along that pattern.
Yeah, I mean, and also for myself, like, I think because I'm a dancer and I'm used to like moving all the time, like kind of having
Mm.
this flow, seated meditation practices have always been extremely challenging for me. You know, and the thing is with mindfulness practices, they're really not meant to force you to do something in a right way. So personalizing it and finding ways that really work for you is a part of the practice. And so for me, like the discovery that like, yeah, just sitting there is can be uncomfortable for me, and actually it's very challenging for my mind starts racing. Of course, is that something I can still continue to work on? Yes, of course. But I also found that by simply having someone else there with me, that companion, huge difference, huge difference. Like just feeling the warmth of them, feeling the structure of their body, and also having the permission to make adjustments, to personalize it, to notice how does my body fit with this other particular body. All of that was like a real like game changer for me as an access point to like mindfulness and meditation practices. So
Mm.
yeah, if that also resonates with people, that's something that they've struggled with, you know, this may be like a variation that may just like make a little bit more sense for some types of people.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to move more towards an exploration of like the concepts of contacts with each other, and the word contact and the word touch. And I think both words can have different connotations and like associations with it. And I wanted to kind of have some time to talk about that with you, since you've given a lot of thought.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like touch feels like it's like a heavy word in a lot of ways. So I'm drawn to the word contact a little bit more because it's a little bit more open. Contact also to me connotes connection, which is very much a part of the practice as well. And that's not just physical connection. It is a sort of like emotional connection or presence. So I like that is there. Of course, we are touching. I think touch also has a lot of associations with the hands. And in restorative contact, I'm really interested in reminding people that we're three-dimensional. We have skin on every surface of our body. You know, we don't have to be limited with our vocabulary around touch. It's like a hug, a handshake, a pat on the head. You know, like maybe there's types of touch that we don't even have a name for what it is when you know, whatever I put my knee on your thigh. Like, that's okay. Maybe we don't have to name it. There's endless possibilities. So I'm really interested in that kind of that wider that wider definition. Also, in terms of the phrase restorative contact, I am referencing contact improvisation because that was a really big influence for me. And also like restorative yoga or other restorative practices. So, you know, if the phrase restorative contact brings up some of those images for people, I think that that can be helpful. But yeah, I mean, we are doing touch practices. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the word contact is great personally because, as you were saying, it is very broad, and hopefully it can relate to more like positive associations or neutral, or at least stay neutral, because I'm
Yeah.
sure the word touch could be connected with memories or trauma or something that is just too much.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it's still a part, touch is still a part of our lives. Like that's what we do
Exactly. No,
with
it's,
ourselves, with each other. Right.
yeah, it's a very fundamental aspect of human development and well-being. So, I mean, that has been such a, I don't know, just something to struggle with over the years, of especially with like all of the Me Too stuff. It's like, yeah, we have a big problem with, you know, abuse and misuse of touch. However, touch itself, you know, the body is innocent, you know, like we can't give up on the body, you know, and it still is important to us, and us learning how to communicate with our body, knowing how to have consensual and safe and pleasurable experiences with our body, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like that's important, you know. So let's, yeah, how can we focus on that to also cultivate some resilience with the body? Like I'm really interested in the body being a very resilient place. It is your kind of home in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And also this like friendliness with the body, that you should, I want people to have a sense of sort of friendliness uh,
Mm-hmm.
with their physical, with their whole self. Yeah.
So do you think contact with another person, how does that work into developing this kind of familiarity and friendliness with ourselves, our bodies?
I mean, while the restorative contact practice, I am teaching it as pairs, so people do it with one other person. It is still a solo journey. So it is still your experiences that you're tracking, what you are noticing, you are adjusting when you need to adjust. So these things aren't mutually exclusive necessarily, that you can still be doing something with someone else, having a shared experience at the same time that it's yours, you know. And I feel like this idea of autonomy is really important, I think, especially in dealing with the body, so that I want people, when they're coming to practice with me, to know that they have the freedom to shift and adjust as they need to, when they need to. And so many of the positions there, you have a lot of freedom over your arms and legs, so you can already start practicing making those choices. And then we also talk about this idea of kind of like a yes and, which I'm kind of pulling from like comedy improv type things, that your partner might make a proposal, they might make an adjustment, and you yes and that. So you're not trying to stop them from what they're doing, but if then you need to make another adjustment in order for you to be comfortable, then you go and do that. And maybe that goes back and forth a few times until you both reach an agreement.
I
So
see. This idea of being comfortable, I personally have been thinking a lot, like just recently, especially when you're cuddling or like next to someone. I feel like there's this struggle where you want to be comfortable, but you want to be next to each other. And you try all these positions, and then sometimes you settle on some position that both people are comfortable. It's kind of hard to figure out comfort for both partners at the same time. But
yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
the concept of comfort, being comfortable and learning to be comfortable in your body and with touch combined, like that's interesting.
yeah, well, that's why also, you know, we are inviting stillness in the practice, but we also do cycle through like a number of poses. So we're not, I mean, there is movement too, because I feel that same sense of like, it's hard to stay for a very long period of time, but we're also working on that, because uh, sometimes it's good to notice, like, where is that discomfort really coming from? Like, is it coming from a kind of fidgetiness in the mind, like a kind of antsy busyness? Or is it really coming from like, oh, my lower back is like hurting me and now I need to adjust? So those are two very different impulses.
Mm-hmm.
So when we kind of slow down and we take a moment to just pause and take stock of like, where is that impulse coming from? Then I would encourage people in class, if it is coming from this like body sensation, make an adjustment. If it's coming from this kind of fidgetiness, maybe you want to just send some breath to that place, that feeling. I like to sort of imagine like the edges of it kind of softening and starting to sort of disintegrate. Um, so yeah,
That's
I
a
mean,
good point.
but also just it being a practice, it's a social practice, a practice of negotiating with another person is a valuable skill, and listening to your partner. When are they fidgeting, and how do you support their need for change and also get what you need too?
That's true. That's a very good point. Um, could you tell me a little about kind of the effects and benefits of restorative contact, either from your personal perspective and a little on the macro level as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll just start first with like my personal experience, which is what has really driven me to want to share it with people. So when I started working on this duet that I mentioned to you, um, I just noticed how I had such a state change. I just felt so relaxed, like my skin felt kind of like tingly. Like, I think of it, the practice as like it wakes up my skin. It's like somehow like when you like water like a plant and all of a sudden it starts like to bloom. It's like that is what the sensation felt like to me, is like my skin coming alive. Like, thank you so much for like giving me attention, focus, and giving me the time to feel something. Um, so yeah, I feel this kind of tingliness, like even this like almost feeling very high. So I tend to be like sort of like a higher energy person. Like, people can probably hear my voice, like it's a lot of energy, and it just like really like grounds me and like calms me down. So yeah, it's a very grounding practice. I know Michelle said one time when we started kind of working on the piece also, that she said like sometimes she might come into the room at the beginning of rehearsal and be feeling like a little bit grumpy, or kind of like, Gabby, I'm annoyed about this and this. And at the end, she just felt like so much more like blissful and connected, and just like, oh, Gabby's great. So it can create a really like warm feeling, like for like your partner, just a sense of like connectedness with your own self, with the other person, a sense of grounding. And then because it is a mindfulness practice, it's all those benefits that are associated with mindfulness, which is really helpful for anxiety and stress, for sleep disorders, for digestion. I mean, also people that have come to my classes, have told me all sorts of things. Like one person noticing that like their heart rate dropped like by a huge amount during class. Another person said they had menstrual cramps that went away. Someone else had a migraine that went away. Just like a lot of different things it can help with. So yeah, because it is a mindfulness practice, because it is a relaxation practice, a practice in slowing down. So yeah, there's a ton of things that it's like, yeah, super beneficial for. And the best thing is it's like actually like really enjoyable. So
Yeah, it
you
seems
get all
like it.
it's like you get all those benefits, and like you can like you're enjoying yourself over like a 90-minute period. So to me it's like a very easy thing to be like, yeah, that's great, I can make time in my week to do that.
Hmm, that's awesome. I was wondering if you could talk a little about how your teaching evolved once everyone was in quarantine and it wasn't as safe to really just meet up in rooms with strangers. Hopefully, that will, not be an impediment anymore. But for now, I I hear it's opened up some opportunities for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, at first I really thought like, oh no, this is horrible. This is like the worst timing ever to be doing like a touch-based practice. But I think that feeling probably lasted for like maybe 2 days for me. I think that also like being an artist and that sort of like creative problem solving has just helped me see like any kind of obstacle as like, oh, okay, so how do I turn this? Like, what opportunities did this provide? So I was very quick to be like, awesome, let's experiment with doing this online. And the permission that came at the beginning of quarantine where nobody knew what they were doing. So I was like, great, I can just do what I want to do. And no one is holding me to anything. So it was felt very authentic, to just be like, this is what I want to try. Anybody who is also open to trying it with me, like, great, come join me. Some of my students the other day were like telling me in my contact improv class online, were saying how like I'm very upfront about sometimes when I'm like, I'm just experimenting. I actually don't know how this is going to turn out.
Yeah.
But that's why I also trust, like, well, did it work out or didn't it work out? Like, because there's no prescribed end result. So,
Yeah.
you know,
What's been some
but
of the feedback so far from the Airbnb experiences and any other online classes you've done?
yeah, I mean, it's been great, yeah, people have really, enjoyed it. I mean, of course, some people find it very challenging, and that's totally fine too. Like, yeah, this can be a very different thing for people. Not everybody is going to easily be able to just downshift to something else. So that's fine. Plus, I think even in my artistic career, like if I get like between like 60 and 80% of the people like what I'm doing and the rest are like, no, I'm like, this is perfect. This is great. Not everything is for everybody. But generally it's been like super positive, like, which also just creates like a really nice warm feeling in me that like, because they did that, like they brought themselves to the practice, their own vulnerability, their own curiosity, their own willingness to engage in a physical practice, a touch-based practice with somebody else. Like, so it's a collaboration. I can only like take so much credit for it. It's really what other people bring to it, their own attention,
Hmm.
their presence. So yeah,
That's
but
good to hear.
just in terms of what you were saying about like things changing. So yeah, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna teach online. And that it was very informative for me also because since I have done contact improv for like many, many years, I am very comfortable making contact with strangers. And so um, I kind of forgot in some ways how that's harder for a lot of people. And also, I'm someone who is very comfortable going into a dance studio, going into a yoga studio. Not everyone is comfortable with that. So it really kind of reminded me that there's people out there who could really benefit from this, but wouldn't feel comfortable going into a yoga or dance studio, that wouldn't feel comfortable working with a stranger, and that's okay because while I think that, working towards working with a stranger is great, that is a goal for me, that doesn't have to be where we start. It's okay. If you want to start practicing with someone that you know in your own home with the video off, great. I'm happy to do that with you. Like, and I think that actually what's nice about this practice as an online offering now is that it doesn't really ask people to be looking at the screen a lot. So, we move slowly. I'm always doing the practice with them so they have a visual reference point, but I'm talking to them. And like I'm not giving them corrections because there's no right or wrong. So it really is a time when they can be in their real space with their partner. And I think that creates a certain amount of safety that is really necessary for a lot of people who are kind of new to this type of thing. So that was great. I had a little bit of a blind spot because of my own experience of being so comfortable. So so that was really helpful for me.
That's really good. That's really good to hear that this kind of practice transitions well online because you could also reach more people and just kind of offer both at some point,
I
hopefully.
hope so. Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. Because I mean, this is, like I said, this is a social practice. So it is about the person you're in the same room with, but it is also about the group of people. So, you know, I definitely try to, we always begin with like a group conversation and we end with a group conversation. And so, you know, that's always a little bit trickier online, you know. So I
Mhm.
miss that part because the community is important to me.
I see. Are there any like solo contacts, solo touch practices that you could talk about?
Yeah, so actually, even prior to teaching these classes, I had already been exploring this. Again, it's this kind of back and forth between my teaching life, my personal life, my choreographic life. So I was already starting to work on this performance where I had this question of like, oh, how can I take what I learned from the duet and explore it as a solo practice? What would that be? So I started then, and then especially when there were so many people that didn't have someone they could practice with, I felt like I needed to offer something for individuals. Like I didn't want to like leave them out. So I do offer a solo classes every Friday at 5 o'clock. Um, and it's not the same, of course, nothing, nothing is the same as contact with another person, but that's okay. You know, we do what we can do. We do a lot of kind of slow, mindful movement. We do, you know, practice self-touch. We're still practicing noticing things and being in sensation, savoring things, pleasure. And then I now call the class cardio and restorative because I realized that for some people it was hard for them to slow down if they hadn't done something of like a higher energy before.
I
So
see.
we do 20 minutes of like get all your energy out, which is great because I'm like, if you're somebody who isn't necessarily like into a lot of cardio, 20 minutes, like you will sweat and then you're done. So we do 20 minutes and it's still a touch base. So I started doing this thing called cardio clapping. It sounds really silly, but again, it came from this very authentic place of like, what do I feel like I want to do because I have permission in this new era of online teaching, just be like, I really don't care. This is what I want to do. Join me or don't. And so I was like, I want to do cardio clapping. And then it was so interesting. I started doing research and like, you know, the hands have a lot of nerve endings. And so stimulating them through clapping is really helpful. Plus,
Hmm.
I think there's something really inherently joyful about clapping. So we do a lot of clapping with palms, but also on the body. So we're stimulating the skin like through physical touch. So it's a different quality of touch, but it's still touch. And it's still, I think, very, you know, useful grounding. There's something grounding about any kind of contact that you make with yourself, you know, even just reaching your head into your hand. So we do all sorts of stuff. And yeah, I think my students know that like I repeat things, but also sometimes I just come in with something totally different one day. So it's exploratory. Yeah.
That's awesome. I recently learned about tapping, which is an older practice, and it seems like it's taking some elements from that. Um, but I've been finding that the repetition element really cool, and like repetition plus touch seems to be really effective as
Mm-hmm.
well. Um, which I think for certain people, as you were saying, you know, different mindfulness practices and general
Mm-hmm.
wellness practices work for different people, and um, it takes sometimes a while to really just like chill. So just
Yeah.
using simple touch techniques could really like just take us there without like intense focus or you know shame or just like critique
Mm-hmm.
ourselves.
Yeah. And what you were saying about like, you know, the repetition, like that all these things are meant to be a practice. So it's like, you know, I tell people just show up. Just show up. That's all you have to do. You know, it's not about like, did you do it right or wrong? You know, how high was your jump or any of that kind of stuff. It's just like you each time might be different, but the showing up, the repetition, the ritual of it, the practice of it, that's what's really important because, you know, these classes are the formal practice, but then you practice it informally in your life,
Mhm.
so, I tell folks that the things that we work on in class, like, you can still be doing some of those throughout the week as you're waiting for, the tea kettle to boil. Even if you're just sitting with someone on the couch, maybe you're able to notice some things that were a little bit invisible to you before. And so then that's
Mm.
the integration. But then you want both. You want to come back to the formal practice so that you're really like, this is the time I'm doing this. And then you're weaving it into every day. And then all of a sudden you start developing some like different habits and different relationships with the body, with others. So
I see.
it's a long game. It's not
Yeah, of
like,
course. That's really, really interesting. Kind of combining all these like physical sensations and techniques and stuff. Um, I wanted to kind of end on a question around how does how do these practices really like provide um, healing and integration, and how do they really kind of influence our day to day from a personal perspective, or what you've seen from your teachings?
well, I mean, I think another word for mindfulness is noticing. And that's a word that actually resonates with me a lot more. For a long time, I was like confused by this term mindfulness. Like, what is it? I don't understand. But noticing, when I heard someone use that word instead, I was like, yes, that's clear to me. Um, and now I'm guilty of throwing around the term mindfulness, but noticing is really the key thing. So your ability to notice like what is present in each moment, inside your body, outside your body, is very precious, because that creates more choices. You're not just doing your automatic reflex of, oh, I do this, or being kind of the horse blinders. You only see one thing. You see so many things. I mean, that's how I feel. I feel like there's so many choices. There's so many possibilities. Like, it's like almost, it makes you better at problem solving, I think. And it also helps you to slow down so that you can not just quickly react, but also, yeah, that also helps with the choice making when you just pause for a moment, and notice, like, what am I feeling? Like, what is my body saying? What am I feeling in my gut? So I feel like it just helps you to sort of make better choices in your life. Um, Maybe better is not fair, because who
Different.
really even knows? Yeah, who even knows what ends up being a good choice or a bad choice? But it helps you to have a little bit more of a sense of like really choosing, as
More
opposed to
agency
agent.
over our choices, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. And also, we live in this world that really prioritizes, the mind, and this idea of like rational thought. And I think it's just so unfortunate that we've disconnected the body and mind, and that we we're very cruel. We're very punishing towards the body. And I'm like, yo, the body is the innocent one. The body is the loyal one. It's just there with us. Like, why are we punishing that one? I like to think there's this quote from Rebecca Solnit, which is, who is heard and who is not defines the status quo. And sometimes in my classes, I'll rephrase that to what is heard and what is not defines the status quo. And I think the what is heard is usually the mind, and so if we really want to start, disturbing the status quo, like, at least during our time together, let's prioritize what the body is experiencing, is noticing. So yeah, I mean, clearly we have a lot of big changes I hope we're going to be making in our
Yeah.
society. So let's try something different. How about it?
Yeah, that's a brilliant way to rephrase that kind of quote and that kind of perspective. And I love how you're talking about the word noticing, because I think it is more accurate, given especially how mindfulness is it never really got translated anyways
Yeah.
perfectly, because a lot
Yeah.
of terms and practices, they've come from such an older way of living, just a different way of living, and especially from a very different kind of language, a different world almost.
Yeah.
So they never really got translated really well, and I feel like they keep getting misinterpreted in at least Western culture. So I think noticing really makes sense in terms of how we use the word, what it means, what role it has in the language, and it relates really well with the body, because we notice not only with our minds but with our eyes, with our sensations, right? With our body, we need our body to notice what's happening, if we're cold, if we need to go somewhere, things like that. So
Yeah,
that's
that
a really good perspective.
yeah, that even noticing negative things is still really useful. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
useful information for us. So I feel like that's the one side of it. And then noticing other things that I think it's like they almost seem like they're kind of neutral or like you don't notice them, but actually when you start to notice them, I find that they become quite pleasurable. And so then
Right.
like you discover this like world of pleasure that you're like sitting in that you just were like not paying attention to,
Yeah.
so I think it's a pretty good option to be like, oh my gosh, I don't mind just like sitting here taking a bit longer because actually like there's so much for me to take enjoyment from, like I have this
Yeah.
like, pillow next to me that's like kind of pink and like and velour, and like I take a moment to actually really enjoy that, then to touch it and I'm like, oh yeah, it's so soft, and there's so much more of that out there. So
That's
slowing
true.
down is not like doing nothing. It is doing nothing, but it's like a doing nothing that's like extremely rich and deep with like the possibilities for like sensation and pleasure.
Yeah. That's getting to know your body is definitely a gateway into really noticing what's happening around you, and understanding like what we, as long as everything's like in equilibrium, it actually is very pleasurable. So it's really nice
Yeah.
to notice that and be like, oh yeah, this is what's happening.
Yeah, very good to notice that, and of course there's always gonna be ups and downs, like there's always going to be maybe some spot that hurts, but like there's also some things that feel really good, so
it's
it's
true.
finding that.
Yeah. So we'll close up. Thank you again for talking about this. I love learning about like, a different perspective about how to approach noticing all kinds of things, and how do we think about our bodies from not like the everyday level, but how do we use our bodies to really connect with each other. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So maybe we can close up by you mentioning the kinds of classes that you offer, and where can people find you?
Sure. So I have these two classes that I'm doing now. One is the restorative contact for quarantine pairs. So you need a partner for that. And I'm doing that through Airbnb experiences right now. And people can join a group class or they can schedule a private session. They could also just contact me directly about that. And then I'm also offering the cardio and restorative class where you don't need a partner, and that's on Fridays at 5 p.m. And it's 1 hour. And all of that is on my website, which is just restorativecontact.com. I'm also really easy to find on various social media things, just my full name, Gabrielle Revlock.
Mm-hmm.
Something that looks like this. And I really do welcome people to ask questions, engage in the conversation with me. Like, yeah, I welcome that. And then I'll also mention that the piece that I told you about, I am in the process right now of working with a filmmaker and turning it into a short video project that will be a part of the Philly Fringe Festival, which runs from September 10th to October 4th. And so that was really part of the seed, the inspiration for restorative contact. So it could be really interesting for people to watch that. And it's free streaming. You just have to register Yeah, so if people want to check that out for that whole month, it's available. And so, yeah, if you go to phillyfringe.com or .org, I'm sorry, I can't remember, or it's
Sure.
on my website, which is gabriellevlock.com, then you
Okay.
can find the piece. So
Yeah, thank you. That's
yeah,
awesome. Well, thank you again. And I hope you host many more classes online and in person.
me too.
And I hope to speak to you again soon.
Yeah, definitely. This was really nice. Thanks so much.